There is an action almost everyone performs dozens of times a day without ever stopping to ask why. You're sitting still, your phone hasn't buzzed, no notification has appeared on the screen, and yet your hand still reaches for it, unlocks it, looks at an empty screen and puts it back down. No clear reason. No one called, no one texted. But you checked anyway. If you pay close attention, you'll notice this happens constantly. While waiting for an elevator, sitting in a meeting, the moment you wake up, while watching a movie, even while talking to another person. And the real question here isn't why are you addicted to your phone. That explanation is too simple and doesn't actually explain anything specific. The real question is, what mechanism in your brain is moving your hand before your conscious mind even gets a vote? The answer lies in one of the oldest and most powerful systems in the human brain. A system that was never designed to make you happy, but to keep you searching. Let's start with the chemical behind this entire behavior: dopamine. There's a very common misunderstanding that dopamine is the feel-good chemical. That's not quite accurate. Research by neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz in the 1990s revealed something closer to the opposite. Dopamine doesn't spike highest when you receive a reward. It spikes highest right before you receive it, in the moment of uncertainty, when you don't yet know what's going to happen. This means dopamine is, at its core, the chemistry of anticipation, not satisfaction. It doesn't reward you for getting what you want. It rewards you for being in a state where you might get something. And this exact mechanism, shaped over millions of years to keep early humans searching for food, scanning their surroundings for opportunity and threat, is now being exploited with remarkable precision by a small device in your pocket. Every time you open your phone when there's no notification waiting, you're unconsciously recreating the exact condition dopamine responds to most: uncertainty. There might be a message. There might not be. Someone might have liked your post. Maybe not yet. You don't know. And that not knowing is what pulls your hand up, not whatever is actually inside the phone. This is the principle behind one of the most important discoveries in 20th century behavioral psychology: the variable reward schedule. In the 1950s, psychologist B.F. Skinner ran a deceptively simple experiment with rats and pigeons. When an animal received a reward every single time it pressed a lever, predictable, consistent, it pressed the lever at a steady, modest rate, and stopped almost immediately once the reward disappeared. But when the reward appeared randomly with no predictable pattern, sometimes after one press, sometimes after 20, lever pressing became nearly compulsive. The animal kept pressing relentlessly, even long after the reward had stopped appearing altogether. Skinner called this a variable reinforcement schedule. And it is exactly the mechanism slot machines in Las Vegas are engineered around. Players don't win every time, they win randomly, unpredictably. And it's that randomness, not the size of the payout, that keeps people sitting in front of a machine for hours. Your phone runs on the exact same principle. Every time you swipe to refresh a feed, every time you pull down to check for something new, you are pulling the lever of a digital slot machine. Sometimes there's new content, sometimes there's nothing. That randomness, not the content itself, is what keeps bringing you back. This explains why checking your phone with no notification present is so common, and why it happens almost entirely without conscious thought. You're not checking because you believe something is waiting. You're checking because your brain has learned, through thousands of repetitions, that checking sometimes pays off. And the part of your brain responsible for this habit doesn't care about the success rate. It only cares that sometimes it works. This brings us to an important distinction: the difference between a habit and a craving. A habit is a behavior repeated enough times that it becomes automatic. You don't decide to do it. Your body simply executes it. Researchers at MIT, particularly in Anne Gray Beal's lab, have shown that once a behavior is repeated frequently enough in a consistent context, a brain region called the basal ganglia effectively takes over execution of that behavior from the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for conscious decision-making. The behavior shifts from "I am choosing to do this" to "this simply happens." This is precisely what happens with phone checking. At first you check for a reason, waiting for a reply, expecting a notification. But after thousands of repetitions, the act of checking becomes a reflex, completely detached from the original reason. You're no longer checking because you expect something specific. You're checking because your hand, in certain contexts, a brief lull, a flicker of boredom, a second of waiting, has learned that this is simply what happens next. But there's another layer underneath this, one that explains why this behavior tends to surface at very specific moments, while waiting, while alone, during any small gap in attention. That's the role of mild discomfort, what psychologists call boredom, or more precisely in recent research, a state of low cognitive stimulation. A study published in the journal Science in 2014, led by psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia, found just how uncomfortable people are when left alone with nothing but their own thoughts. In the experiment, a striking number of participants chose to give themselves a mild, unpleasant electric shock, rather than simply sit quietly, undistracted for a few minutes. The phone has become the reflexive tool for filling exactly that kind of gap. Any moment with even a small amount of cognitive emptiness, waiting at a red light, waiting for someone to reply, a second of silence in conversation, registers in your brain as a mild discomfort that needs to be filled immediately. And the phone is the fastest, easiest, lowest effort way to fill it that you have. This is why you check your phone even when you're already certain there's nothing new. You're not actually searching for information. You're searching for a way to escape that few seconds of emptiness, and simply picking the phone up, even to a blank screen, produces a small sense of being occupied, of doing something, even when nothing is actually happening at all. There's one final factor, more social than neurological, but no less significant: the fear of missing out. Researchers call this FOMO, fear of missing out, and it runs on a very specific evolutionary fact. For most of human history, being cut off from the group's information meant real danger. If the rest of the group knew a predator was nearby and you didn't, that could cost you your life. The human brain is wired to treat not knowing what others know as a survival risk, not just a social inconvenience. There are no predators today, but that same neural architecture is still fully intact, and it responds to an unread group message, an unseen social media notification, in much the same way, as an information gap that must be closed immediately, before it's somehow too late. So when you put all of these pieces together, the picture becomes considerably clearer. You check your phone even when it hasn't rung, because dopamine in your brain is built to respond to uncertainty, not to the actual reward itself. Because your phone, whether by accident or by careful design, operates on exactly the same variable reward principle discovered through slot machines and animal experiments decades ago. Because this behavior has been repeated so many times, it has become an automatic reflex, operating outside the reach of conscious decision-making. Because every small gap in your day, a second of waiting, a flicker of boredom, triggers a mild discomfort that the phone is simply the fastest available tool to relieve. And because, somewhere deep in your evolutionary wiring, not knowing what's happening still registers at some level as a kind of risk. None of this means you're weak, undisciplined, or unusual in some way. This isn't a personal failure. This is a biological system millions of years in the making, reacting exactly the way it was built to react. Except this time, it's reacting to a device engineered, with remarkable precision, to exploit that exact system. You're not addicted to your phone in the sense of being weak-willed. You're responding to one of the oldest psychological mechanisms human beings have, triggered hundreds of times a day by something small enough to fit in the palm of your hand.